Welcome to this video on the Amazon clone. In this video, we'll be setting up our Stripe payment gateway, both in NestJS and also on the front end with React. So the first thing that you need to do is you need to go to stripe.com and you need to sign up. And after you sign up, you can navigate to the API keys section. And basically you have two keys here. You have a publishable key, and that's the one you use on the client, and that's okay for it to be seen. And then you also have the secret key, and that's the key that works on the server. And these keys are, they rely on one another. So let's go ahead and we'll start by building this up on the back end. So just recall that we have our Mongo database running. And I'm just in the base of this project here. And I'm going to open up the API folder here. And I'm just going to install a couple of things here. I'm going to do an npm install at nestjs-config. And I'm also going to install Stripe. But before I do that, I'm just going to cut that there. Because I want to CD into the API folder, into the backend first. And then I'll go ahead and I'll paste this. Okay, well, npm install at nestjs/config and also Stripe. So let's just open up the package.json here to see that those dependencies have been installed. So config, we got nestjs/config here, and that's just to set our environmental variables easily. And then we also got Stripe. So we got the latest version of that as well. So we can go ahead and close that package.json file up. Now in the source, right now we have an auth folder, user folder, and a product folder. Let's go ahead and just make another folder. We'll call it the Stripe folder. And actually we'll use the command line for this. Now I'm just going to run npx at nestjs-cli. If you already got the nest CLI, you can just have the command nest there. I was playing around with it and something happened there. So I'm just going to use the npx executable version of that. So generate a module and we'll call it Stripe. So we'll let that load. And now we see that we got this Stripe module here, and the Stripe module has been added to this app module here. Now we can also open this up and we can do a similar sort of thing here. But we can also get the controller and we'll call this Stripe as well. This will be nested within the module there. So we can just say no spec because we don't want to do any further testing. Actually, we did NestJS testing in my other video series in the LinkedIn clone. So check out that if you want to see that. And in addition to that, we'll have a service. And that's all we should really need here on the back end. And we can see that it's been added to the module, the Stripe module here. So what I want to do is I want to just start off by having an environmental variable. So in the root of this project here, we'll just right click on the API tab here, and we'll have a .env file here. Now, this is where you'll need to reveal this test key. It's going to be the same format as this here. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to call this Stripe secret key. And I've actually copied the PK one here just for demonstration purposes, but you would go ahead and copy the next one and you'll be able to identify it is the right one because rather than PK, it says SK at the beginning. So I'm just going to go ahead and pause the video, copy mine in here, and then unpause the video so we can continue off. So I just copied my environment variable into that folder there. I've also went to the git ignore here. I've just ignored the .env so I don't upload that. So with that, we have the building blocks we need to start going. So let's just start with the model. So I'm going to have a file here in Stripe, and I'm going to call it the cart model. And I'm going to go ahead and just have an interface here. I'm going to call it cart item. And essentially, it's just going to be a name of a string, price of a number, a quantity of a number, a description, which is optional, which is a string. Then we get the Mongo generated ID. So this is pertaining to the document, but it also has the quantity as well associated with it. And then just the versioning, which is also just a number here. And then I'm just going to go ahead and export a type for the cart, which is just the cart item here. And then I'll go ahead and just save that. And we can go ahead and open up our service here. So this is where we'll be doing most of the work. So what we can have is we can say, well, let's start off by importing Stripe from Stripe. And then we can go ahead and we can import the cart from here. Oh, and I should have mentioned, it's really important that you generate your own key, because if you're only using one of my keys, it won't work. And you need the server key for everything to work. So you will need to actually sign up and do all that sort of stuff. So yeah, the cart here. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to have a variable here. Just call it the Stripe. And then in the constructor here, what I'll have here is I'll just say this.stripe equals new Stripe. And then we can go ahead and we can access that Stripe environment variable that we had. And actually, I think I may have forgotten one step here. In the app module, I believe, in order to use the environment variable, we need to have a config module, which we just installed. And we can use the for root method on that. And then we can pass in an object here. And then we can say is global, and we can just set that to true. And all that allows us to do is to access our environmental variables throughout our application if we need to, and we will need to. So yeah, we can just close that. So yeah, we can access that key that we've created here. So I've called it the Stripe secret key. And as a second argument here, we'll pass in the API version. And I was just looking at some NestJS implementations of this, and actually you get the IntelliSense here, so 2020-08-27, and I actually found that value on the documentation as well. I'm sort of surprised it's not a little later. If anyone knows anything about that, send a comment in. But this seems to be all right. So now that we have our Stripe object instantiated, we can go ahead and make use of it. So let's just go ahead and make a checkout method here, and we'll just go ahead and we'll just use the cart. So we'll get that type in there, and recall that's just the array of all the cart items which is just a document, but with the quantity associated with it, with the product. and we can just go ahead and we can just say, well, we'll get the total price. So what we're imagining is we have an array of these. So some cart items might have more than one quantity associated with them. So what we'll do is we'll just take the entire cart and then we'll reduce it down to the sum of the products of the quantity and prices for each of the items. So we can take the accumulator, which is, the total price, and, the particular cart item that we're iterating through will be the second parameter there. So, and actually this should be in its own, higher order function that we're passing through. And, we'll do something here. And the first thing we want to do is just pass in 0, because the initial price is going to start at 0 for the first item. And then we're going to return, that 0 plus the item quantity multiplied by the item price. So now you would want to check to have some heavier checks on the back end. But just for, demonstration purposes here, what's happening here is we're looping through each of the items in the cart. Initially, the total price is 0 for the first item. Then we say we take the item quantity and then we times it by the item price for the first item. And then they'll return back a value, which will then be passed in here. So then on the second iteration, the accumulated total price, you take that total value from the first item and then you multiply it by the second item, and you continue that process through the entire, number of elements in that array. And then you can deduce the total price that we want to send to Stripe. So that's just some JavaScript things, but if you're used to using map a lot and you haven't used reduce in a while, that's just a little refresher on that. So now I can access this Stripe because, we're dealing with a class here. And on the Stripe object that we've created, there's a method here called payment intents. And what we can do is we can go ahead and we can call the create method. Because what we're doing here is, we're letting Stripe, the API, know, and I need to put this method in here. We're intending to make a payment. So someone on the front end, they have their cart, they have their products, they have the number of the products selected. We get the total price of all those products. And then, we want to tell the Stripe API that, all right, someone wants to make a payment. So they're intending to make a payment. And then we can have the amount here. And this is the total price. Now we have to times this by 100 because by default Stripe uses cents and we've got things in dollars. Now you can also go ahead and you can pass a currency in here. If you had multiple currencies, you could deal with that. I'm just going to keep things simple and just use USD here. But of course, I'll just write a note here to set the currency. And then we have this payment underscore method underscore types. And you can have multiple things here, but I'm just going to accept the card here. So all we're doing here is we're just letting Stripe know that, look, something costs this amount of money and we want to pay for that. And then we'll continue, we'll get some, we'll have our API key here on the back end, but the front end will also generate the corresponding key that it needs. So then on the front end, you can continue to, enter your credit card in and make the secure payment. So let's go to the controller here. And in the controller, we just want to make a method here. So we want to have a post method here, and we'll just do it to the endpoint /Stripe or /API/Stripe. So I'll just do a control space there to bring that post in. Now I also want to have a checkout method here. The name's irrelevant, but we'll keep it consistent with the service method name. So we're going to pass in the body, and our body is going to be composed of a cart, and that's just going to be of the cart type. And then we'll go ahead and do our work here by calling that. But let's just bring in our types that we need here. So we're going to need to inject a service. Yes, so we'll send the body, which will be an object, with the cart, which is an array of the products with the quantities associated with them that they've selected. Now I'm just going to do a try catch here. And I'm just going to say, what we'll do is we'll just return, and it's a service that we need to use here. So we'll have a constructor, and in the constructor, we'll just go ahead and we'll just inject the Stripe service there. And then we'll just go ahead and get that in there. So now that we have that, we can just go ahead and we can get the Stripe service, and then we can go ahead and we can call the checkout method, and then we can just go ahead and put our cart in there as a parameter. Otherwise, we'll just go ahead and return the error back to the user. And that's all we really need to do here on the back end. So let's just go ahead and try that out. So I'm just going to run an npm run start dev to get the NestJS server going. And we'll just have a look out for any errors because we made a few changes there. So we don't have any errors there, so that's good. So what we want to do is we just want to test that out. So I'm logged in my Postman. So if you haven't logged in, just go ahead and log in. And you can also just get a list of all the products here. So I got a few products here, prices, names, and all that stuff. We set that up in the previous video. I've got 3 products here. And what I've done is I've just simulated as if I'm going to send a product here. So here I've got learn about React here, the React course, which is, this product here. It's got the same ID and all that sort of stuff. The only difference is it has this quantity 2 here, and we're in a cart in an object, and the array of the items there, which are objects. So let's go ahead and send that. And we can actually see that we got a request. We got a response. So that's a really good sign. If we navigate over to the payments page in the Stripe website, we can actually see that we've got this incomplete payment here. So someone's made the request, they want to make the purchase, and we got the amount here, but they haven't actually completed the, they haven't entered their details. So we will need to come back to the front end and allow them to do that. But it's great that they have been able to get the request. And just to have a quick look at the response, we see that they've got this randomly generated ID. The amount, you see it's times by 100 because that's the way the Stripe rolls. And if you just have a look at some of these values here, when it was created, all that sort of stuff here, the currency type, which is USD, which was specified. But here we've got the client secret as well. And so what's going to happen is we have our secret on the back end, then we're going to have the secret on the front end. And then when we make a request to our backend, it's going to generate this new secret for us, this client secret. And using that value, we'll be able to determine if things are successful or not. Well, that can be one of the factors, assuming all the values are right, but we're going to need to check that. And that's actually done on the front end. So let's go ahead and switch over into the front end. Okay, so I'm just going to close up the backend files here. And I'm going to open a new terminal. I'll cd into Amazon here, the front end project. And we're going to need to install two packages here. We're going to need the Stripe, which is at stripe/stripe-js. And then we're also going to need the React abstraction over the top of that, so we can use some hooks. So we're going to have stripe-react stripe-js for that. And I'm in the Amazon clone project. Let's just check. Yes, we've got those two dependencies there, so that's good. Now I can just go ahead and run an npm start here. Now it's going to ask me to do it on a different port because we got 3000 on the other one. So we'll just confirm that loads up, and then we'll just hide the terminal there. And we can see that it's loading up 3000 here. So just check everything's working by just, signing up. Logging in with a previously created password. Now I'm just going to press F12 here so I can open up the DevTools here. Now, first things first, we got this cart page, we've got nothing on the page. So let's just reuse these components here. I won't spend a great time making this super beautiful. But we want to be able to reuse this component here so we can see these in the cart, and then we'll also have the total price and those sorts of things. So let's just start off by going into the product component, and that's located in the features, the products features, and there's a component here. So right now we're just using some state. So we can see that we've got this set count thing here. We want to get rid of that. And we want to get rid of that. And we also just want to get rid of this because that's just, internal state. What would be better is if we had the cart state. So we've got this dispatch method here. What else would we like is we would like to access that state. So recall we're using Redux Toolkit here. So we can just go ahead and we can get the cart state by using the app selector. Bring that in. And then we'll take the state of the application, and we want the product state because we've also got auth state as well. And then what we'll do here is we'll just say, we'll have a variable here called QTW for quantity. And what we want to do is we just want to see if the particular product component has a quantity associated with it, and if it does, show that quantity. And that way, when we reuse the component, it will be able to display that quantity correctly. So what I'll do is I'll just find a particular item from our cart. The cart's just an array, so this will work. Even if there's nothing there, it'll just give back nothing. But since it is associated with a product, we know that it's going to give us something, unless there's some really strange state going on, playing with developer tools or something like that. But essentially what we want to do here is we just want to detect if there is a cart item. And if there is a cart item, we can just go ahead and we can set the quantity variable to cart item quantity. And admittedly, you could probably clean this code up a little bit if you wanted to. So I'm just going to have a look here, see what we're working with here. Now we can get rid of the use state there. So because, we're no longer using the state. And let's just have a little scroll through here. So we're still able to decrement the product. However, I want to disable this if the quantity is equal to 0. And rather than showing count here, I want to show quantity. And that's pretty much it. So if I take a look at the cart page, we can see that I've got this header component here. Now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to copy some stuff from the home page here. Now you'd probably want to refactor this a little cleaner, but I won't do that. You could easily put that into its own component. Don't really think it's going to be worth it for what we're doing here. We sort of already know what we're doing with that sort of stuff. So yeah, let's just go ahead and bring some stuff in. So let's just grab that there. So we got the use app dispatch. Actually, we won't need that for here. So let's just get rid of that. Actually, I think we just need the products and the cart here. So we'll need to bring in that use app selector. So let's get that. And then we can pretty much deduce the total quantity and total price from here. So we can say, and let's just close this here. We can just say, actually, we don't even need this just yet. Let's just go ahead and see if that works. Let's just get this in here. And then we'll go ahead and make some changes as needed. So, all right, let's refresh here. You can add one here, add two here, add one here. Now, if we go to the cart page, we're on the cart page, but notice it preserves those values everywhere, where previously it wasn't doing that. So that was just a quick setup on the cart. So now what we want to do is we want to start, we want them to enter their credit card. We want to show the total price. We want to make the API call. So let's go ahead and do all that stuff. So back to our cart page here. Again, you could refactor that thing into its own component there. What I'm going to do here is under this div here, I'm going to add a div here. And I'm just going to give it a little bit of styling here. Give it a little bit of a width of, 80%. And if you'd prefer to, not do inline styles, you can style it however you want. Again, the focus of this isn't on, styling and refactoring all the files and stuff like that. It's just, more on the concepts of making the API request here. So let's just add a HR here. And we'll just give it a little bit of styling. So then we'll just have a line that separates the items. So I'll just say style margin top. We'll say that's 16 pixels. And then below this HR, we'll have a div. And we'll have 2 spans in there. So let's just save that. So it lines it out a little nicer. And let's just copy one of these styles here so you don't have to retype that out. So what I'll do here is I'll just say display flex. And this is just so we don't have something completely terrible looking. although it won't be super pretty, but I'll leave that as an exercise to the viewer to, really make it look as nice as you want it. So 20 pixels here. Now in the first span here, what we're going to say is we need some values here. So we have the cart and we've got the products. So let's have a total quantity because we want to show the total quantity. And we'll just take the cart and we'll reduce it. So for each item, we will take the total, accumulation of the quantities from the previous items. And then we'll just go ahead and we'll just add on the quantity there. And then the initial one will pass in as 0 there. And I'm just going to Shift Alt down that because I want to have the total price as well. And in this scenario, we have the accumulation of each item's price, which is the item quantity multiplied by the item price. And of course, we'll just start off at 0 here. So with that there, in our style, in our span here, we can say we can have a subtotal, of whatever, total quantity, which we need to do that. So we'll have that many items there. And then in the second span, we'll say that we want it to equal to the total price, but we just want to have 2 decimal points here. So we'll just say to fix 2. And the reason I put in spans here is so I can just have a bit of styling on each of them. So this first bit here, we can just say, oh, okay, whatever. We can have a bit of margin right here, 16 pixels. And then here we can have a margin bottom, let's say, of 48 pixels. And then let's also just say we want a font weight of 500 to make the price a little bolder. So let's just go ahead and save that. And now we can see we've got our 3 items here in our cart. And of course, if we minus them off, it gets our total price there. So that's good. Probably one of the next things we want to do is create a payment gateway. So let's go ahead and make a payment gateway component. So let's just do that in here. We've got these components here. So let's just call this payment component, TSX here. Now, let's just go ahead. We will have the payment component, but we also want to have a wrapper around it because we need to pass in, we need to use some hooks in this component. So if we have a wrapper around it, it will allow us to do that. So let's have another component here. And I'm going to call this the payment gateway. It's not going to take anything in here. But we're going to need to have a few things here. So we've installed some packages. Now we're not going to need React, that import there. But what we will need here is we want to import something called load stripe, and that's coming from at stripe/stripe-js, the non-React version. So what's going to happen there is we're going to go get this publishable key. It doesn't really matter if people know what this is. Obviously, if you use it for your app, it won't work. But there's no harm in having that online because that's just all in the front end code, so people can find that anyway. It's really the secret key on the back end that you want to keep secret. Although if possible, you would want to hide both. But we're not really dealing with anything serious here with any proper apps. It's just all for testing. So if someone gets your secret key, and they want to make payments to you, it's not really a massive deal or anything, but you wouldn't want things to get, destroyed in somehow, or, people doing dodgy requests to it and, all that sort of stuff. So you obviously want to make it secure where you can, where it makes sense. But with that said, we'll create a constant variable here. This is called the Stripe promise, and this is where we use the load Stripe thing. And this is where I just put in this key here, the public key. So with that, what we can do is we can also, we also need something else. Oops. So I just closed my VS Code there for some reason. But what I want to do here is I want to import something called elements. And this is coming from Stripe React JS here. We'll also want card element, use Stripe, and use elements here. So that's there. Now we don't need all of them just yet, but we will make use of them. So let's come to our payment gateway, which is just a wrapper around our payment component. And the reason we're doing this wrapper here is because we want to have an elements, which is sort of just like context in a way, where you pass in the particular Stripe promise. So that component will handle that for us. So it uses our public key, and it wraps our entire payment component here. So that means when you can use the elements or use stuff inside of that component. So it's very similar to context. And you'd probably want to refactor that into an environment file or something like that. But again, on the front end, it's not as important as it is on the back end. But yes, rather than exporting the payment component, let's go ahead and export the payment gateway. And then in our cart page, let's just save that. In our cart page, somewhere around there, what we want to say is if our total quantity is greater than 0, go ahead and display that payment gateway. So let's see that. Let's come up to the top here, look at the imports here. It's looking all right. So let's return back to our application here. So, I closed it too. So I'm going to need to cd into the API, do an npm run start dev. And then I'm going to come into my Amazon and I'm going to do an npm start, which will prompt me to do it on a different port. Open it up on a different port, that is. So I'll probably need to sign in again. I know we can set up local storage and all that sort of stuff. That's great. So let's just say 2 React courses, come to the cart, and we can see that it's actually rendering this payment component, but it also had all that context surrounding it. So something, well, there's nothing going wrong, which is a good start. Let's close this home page here. So now we've got that, we can actually start to work on the actual payment component itself. So let's go ahead and do that. So just here where we've got our component here, we probably want to, well, we need our cart because our cart has the total price in it that we want to send off to the server. We can take that cart, and that's coming from our use app selector method that we've created in our custom hooks there, which is just a wrapper for the React query, React toolkit global state there. Oh, and speaking of the global state, if we go into our products here, into our product slice here, one thing that we may want to do is have a reset method. So, you know, when you buy something, you don't want the values in the cart to be the same, because if it's succeeded, we just want them to be removed. So if we just come down to our slice here, our product slice here, we've got in our regular reducers, we've got the increment and decrement. So they're just, you know, the non-asynchronous state managing methods here. Otherwise, we'd use these extra reducers. But just below here, we want something called reset cart. And that just takes the state of this product slice here. And all we really want to do is just say, set the cart back to an empty array. And then we'll just need to export that. So that was a slight tangent, but we will need to reset our component there. So here in the payment component, we've got our cart. Well, now that we've created that reset method, we want to call our use app dispatch method here. So we can, you know, reset something if it goes well. So what I want to do here though is I want to have a little bit of state. So because I'm doing some specific API calls to the server here in a certain way, it'd probably be better if you separate this into its own file. But I just want to display, you know, if it's processing or not, and what the status was, then I can display stuff on the front end. So I'm just going to say, I'm going to have a bit of state here. I'm going to call it is processing and set is processing equal to use state. So by default, it'll be the false Boolean. And let's bring that import up to the top there. Let's separate that. Let's just duplicate that down. Now, I just want to do some payment status. Now, it doesn't really matter what this is because we're going to set some ourselves if there's an error. But we will get a value from the response. So once again, let's just get that total quantity method there. Let's just grab that because we will want that. Total quantity here. And then we also want to use those hooks. So we can say stripe is use stripe, that hook there that we get from that package, and elements is equal to use elements. So basically what we want to happen is we want to make, you know, firstly they make the request and we've seen that, like they have the intention to make it, but then they actually want to put in their details and follow up on that request. And what we'll do for that is we'll use the use effect hook here. Because, well, firstly, if the total quantity is 0, we'll just return because we don't want to do anything. But if the payment status is not equal to succeeded, we also want to return. But if it does succeed, it will make it past there. And then we can just go ahead and we can reset our cart. And that's the method we created before. So we only get this payment status of succeeded if we make our request and it succeeds. In every other case, you won't make it past there, so our cart will stay intact. So, okay, so let's just start to style this out a little bit. So, because all we need to do is make a API request from here and pass in the right data, and then we're sorted. And but we just need to have the right, elements and stuff like that. So I'm just going to have a form here. It's going to have the ID of the payment form, and then inside there we'll have a label. And we'll also have a card element. So we can get rid of this action here. Now, this HTML, this card element, this comes from Stripe, and that's the element that actually you put the credit card in and it does all the checking of that and all that sort of stuff. So all that secure processing stuff, that's handled for us, thankfully. So we still need to be diligent and set things up and wire everything up nicely. But we can just say for the label card element, and then we can just give this an ID of card element. So that way, if you click the label of place order, it will focus in on the field. And actually, we can make this a self-closing tag. So essentially, what we want to have here is we've got this is processing field. Now, we haven't set up the logic for that, but it makes sense if you had something where if it's not processing, then what we'll do is show the button to be able to pay. Because that infers that, there's cart items and nothing's already in progress, so you're able to click pay. But if it is in process, then that pay button will disappear, so they won't double up. And let's just add a little bit of styling here. So I'm actually going to take this from the regular button. I think we created a shared button actually somewhere. Ideally, you'd probably want to reuse that shared button. Oh no, I didn't use a shared button. I must have used the material button. Oh, well, it doesn't really matter. I think on one of them, there's a whole bunch of styling. If not, I'll just like something like this is a good start. Just get a bit of style in there. I mean, you'd probably want to refactor that to its own button. But let's just start with this. So margin top, height, background color. We won't have a border color. We won't have a text transform. But let's have a display of flex here. We'll have a font weight of 600 to make the pay, the main call to action. Make the font size 20 pixels. Give it some padding in here. And we've made it flex, so we can go ahead and center things horizontally and also vertically, because that's the main axis on the row there by default. And then we'll just give it a bit of a cursor or pointer. So let's see what that gives us. Oh, and before I show that, let's say if it is processing, let's just have a div here to say it's processing. Now this won't be showing straight away. And if it is processing, if it isn't processing, and there's a payment status, we can go ahead and we can say the status is equal to the payment status. And now I'm thinking about it, we probably want to, so initially the payment status is a blank string, so that won't show. It's only when we have a payment status, which is either an error or, the succeeded, that will show. So let's look at our cart. It's not there. But then if we open that up, we see that, we've got this play button here. Let's also just add a little bit of width of 100% here. Did we spell something right? Oh, is that align items? Okay, so we can see that we've got this element here, and this is, it's sort of small, but we've got the place order here. If we click on the place order, we can see that it highlights it for us. And then, we type some things in here, and, we can click pay. Now that actually, made a request, because by default it thinks the server and the API and the thing front end's on the same area. But we just need to prevent some of the defaults there. But this is actually that secure, card thing you can type in there. Now, with Stripe, they have this thing where you can test your API. And if you type in 424242 over and over again, they'll allow you to make requests. So you can see some of these ones I was doing before I started this video have succeeded. And, in test mode, that's how you can do that. There's also all sorts of other ones where I think they have like different types of cards, like debit cards and all those other ones. So you can just refer to the documentation for that. But the main one to know is 4242 over and over again. But now all we really need to do now is just, have the requests going. So let's have a look here. And I'm starting to think, oh, we do have some environment variables here. That's good, because we can also put our, oh, well, I'll leave this for you to do, but if we wanted to, we could put our Stripe, not primary key, public key there. So let's go ahead and call the handle submit function here. So we've got this form here. Let's say on this form, when you submit it, we want to handle that submission. And we'll have our handle submit method here. So this is going to be an async. We would put this in another file typically, but or at least parts of it, because this is where we're going to do a request here, but I'm just going to leave it here for now. So yeah, I'm just going to have a HTML form element here. It's the form event. That's React, so we can bring that in from React. And then we'll need to call this handle submit. We'll just automatically pass in the callback there, or the event there for the type, for the argument, based off the form submission there. Now, the first thing we saw before, we want to prevent default so it doesn't try and make a request to itself. And then one thing we want to do here is if the total quantity is 0, just return. If the stripe or the elements are not present, just return there. So recall there those hooks here, and we're going to make use of those nows to see what they do. So basically on elements, because we've set up this wrapper component here, which has the elements surrounding the payment component, that means within the payment component, we can use the elements hook. And that's why I've sort of separated it out like this as well. But with the elements hook, what that allows us to do is it allows us to access the particular elements. So we've got this card element here. So that's that main bit of functionality that we have here. I mean, the main, entering the credit card section. So we don't write that by scratch, but that's what we get provided to us. I think you can do some sort of customization and stuff like that, but that's beyond the scope of this tutorial. So that's how we can access that particular card element, is by using that elements hook that's provided to us. They have a get element method here, and then we can just put the name of the thing, which is card element, and that's the thing that we're getting there. Now what I'm going to do at this stage is I'm going to set is processing to true, and I'm going to have a try catch here. And really, you'd probably want to refactor this into its own service or something like that. But I'm just going to go straight up and make the request here. So I'm going to get a response here. And I'm going to await Axios. So we're going to need that. Where is it? Here. Let's just put it here. And we want to do a post method. And then I'm just going to need to do some backticks here. And we saw that in that environment spot there, we can access the process.env.react app base API. And then we got the Stripe endpoint here. So that's the first argument there, which is just the endpoint. And then we want to pass in the cart, which is just an object of the cart and the actual cart that we're getting from our store there. So that's all well and good. So we need to wait for that to happen, because they're sending their intention, and then they're going, if everything succeeds, they'll get this request back and it will have this client secret on it. So recall that, we've set up our keys and everything like that. And then this is a special value that we're getting back here. So we're going to get the client secret here. And I'm just going to rename that into camel case. So I'll just do that. And that's based on the res data. If at any point an error occurs, we'll catch the error. You probably want some better generic error handling, but I'm just going to do a console error of the error. And then I'm also just going to say set payment status equals to payment failed. And then after all this, I'm going to set is processing back to false. But I'm going to need to do a bit of stuff here, because we've made the intention. We've got the client secret. So now, since we've got the front end set up, they can enter their credit card in and send off the client secret. So basically what we want to do here is we want to get something called payment intent. And this is coming from Stripe. So we can await Stripe, and Stripe, they have a, so this is the Stripe hook here. So to be able to use that, so we can await that. And they have a method called confirm card payment here. So what this does is it takes the client's secret. So, you know, you get that intention to make the request, which says basically how much it is in the store. So let's just open that up. So it's, right now it's incomplete, $19.98. There's some values associated with that, but there's also the secret associated with that. And what we want to do is we want to pass in a second thing here, because recall that on our on the back end we're passing in the card as a payment method. So here we can say that the payment method here is a card, and the card is that card element, and we know it's going to be there because we're using it here, and it's accessed through the element thing. So we're basically hooking into that element tag, and then based on the users and stuff like that, we're able to confirm that the details they pass in are correct or not. So basically, if there's no payment intent, it means something went wrong. We can just say, the payment failed. Otherwise, we can say, set the payment here, and we can set it to the payment intent dot status. And I think that's all we need to do here. So let's go ahead and test that out there. So let's just refresh this page here. Let's refresh this as well. So let's just add 3 bottles of water. And let's go to our cart and do it there. Now you would ideally probably want to style this so each element, it's only showing if there's something in there, and you select it from elsewhere, and then it takes the full width of the screen. But again, that's just a styling thing. Let's add one of these here and one of these here, and then we've got 5 items, total order of $20.95. So let's just type something wrong in here. I'll just enter a card of 55, and I'll click pay here, and we can see that we've got this payment failed here. And if I refresh this here, well, I don't know if it takes a second or not, if it made the intention. Or perhaps it, well, let me just refresh this here. But it made the failing of that. So let's just refresh that and do that again. So I'll order 3 of these, 1 of these, 1 of these. And then I'm going to go ahead and type in the 42, 42, 42, 42, 42, 42, 42, 42, 42, 42, etc. And then I'll go ahead and I'll click pay. Okay, so something actually is going wrong here. Let's see here. I'm going to open up my back end. Okay, so something's going wrong on the back end here. Getting a invalid integer. Oh, is it complaining about that? Let's see here. Maybe when I make the request, Now you'd want to obviously handle that on the back end, so that doesn't happen. But just to make the payment, if I go ahead and I go to okay, so we are passing the card in. So we will need to handle this on the back end. Okay, so let's go to the back end. I was trying to do something easy there, but so let's go to this service here. And after we do this, let's just say, I don't know if this will work. 2 fixed 2 decimal places. Let's just do this here. All right, I'm going to pause the video for a sec. All right, so what I'll do is I will do that, but I will pass it to a number here. So hopefully that might work. So 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, one of these. Go to the cart. 4, 2, 4, 2, 4, 2, 4, 2. It's processing. That's a good sign. It cleared the cart. Now you probably want some sort of message saying, oh, you know, you've bought the item or something like that. But if we go over into Stripe here, we can see that the payment actually is complete there. So that's awesome. So we've set up the Stripe payment on our project here. That's pretty much all I really want to cover on the e-commerce Amazon clone. Obviously, it's not a full clone, as you would expect, but it's got some good features here. It's got, you know, registration, logging in, you know, products page, a cart, and most importantly, it's got the Stripe payment gateway. Immediately, we could have refactored the code a little cleaner and had some, you know, better styled components here. But I didn't really want to go like too far into all those basic things. I really wanted to just focus on using React with Redux Toolkit, you know, setting up a project, you know, doing a little bit of testing on the front end. There's back-end testing in another video series. But most importantly, just setting up that payment gateway there. So that's a big thing there. And we've got everything working there. So I think that's going to conclude the Amazon clone video series. Let me know what you think of what to build next, perhaps, or go into some more concepts or anything like that. But thanks so much for watching, guys. And stay tuned for the next video. Cheers.